Hi, Daniel. My name is Keith Hulen. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a talent acquisition screening technology called SmartRank. You actually know, I think, quite a few of our advisors, William Tincup, Tim Sackett, Craig Fisher, and a couple others probably if I mention them. I met with quite a few people on your team. I met with Donald Knight, Ariana Moon, Sean DeLea, and Jennery Talons. I've shown demos of our product to all four of them, and I think there was genuine interest by all four of them on how our technology could potentially work with Greenhouse. The reason I'm reaching out to you today is because I think there's a real win-win opportunity between Greenhouse and SmartRank, whether that be through a partnership, whether that be through potential acquisition. We actually have a couple companies right now that are interested in potentially purchasing our technology, but we don't need to get to that right now. Some of the biggest reasons, though, that I think that the partnership with Greenhouse is probably the best is because, one, the majority of the prospects or the clients that come to us are Greenhouse customers. And I think that this is probably for a couple different reasons. One, you just have a lot of clients. So statistics will tell you that just a lot of clients are going to come from Greenhouse because you have so many clients. But I think there's another more telling issue, which is our technology specifically addresses a very, very big problem in talent acquisition in the hiring process, and that's screening, that I'm not sure that Greenhouse is really addressing directly for the clients right now. So I think that's one big thing. Another big reason why I feel like this would be a big benefit for Greenhouse is just because obviously there's a lot of well-funded, up-and-coming ATS startups like the Ashby's and stuff that are coming that want to take your market share. And obviously you probably don't want to give up any of that. But there's a lot of parity between a lot of the ATSs. So providing something that, frankly, the Ashby's and the Levers and those companies cannot compete against is something that we've spent the last 4.5 years building. And I think coupled with Greenhouse would kind of make Greenhouse unstoppable from that standpoint. You know, I'm sure you're always looking at new products and new features, but this takes that to a whole different level. Another reason is because you've dominated the SMB and the mid-market space, and I would imagine enterprise is the next big fish that you want to get. But I've sold in the enterprise space for many years, and I can tell you that that is a tough nut to crack. It's very difficult to get in, and you have to have some real compelling differentiators if you're going to take away convince an HR or a talent acquisition leader to take away the ATS that they're currently using and replace it with a Greenhouse, right? You're talking about an HRIS like Workday or potentially replacing an iCIMS. There has to be some very compelling reasons to be able to do that. There has to be some major problems getting solved. Our application specifically provides those type of benefits. To be able to walk in there as a Greenhouse sales representative and say, we consistently reduce screening by 75 to 90% of the time that you would normally spend. That's a huge win that equates directly to dollars and something that the executives can really make sense of and build a business case around. That's one of the reasons why UPS reached out to us. Us being a very small company, UPS is extremely interested in our technology because of the approach that we take to screening. I think the other big thing, you've talked about this before, I've actually sat in a room where you talked about DE&I being very important. But if we can get very candid for a moment, it's nice to talk about DE&I and companies talk about training and awareness and all these things, and that's fine and dandy. But the only way you're really going to address DE&I from a hiring standpoint is to address it at its inception, and that's at the screening process. And if you don't remove resumes and names from that screening process, then we're all kidding ourselves by saying that we're really working on DE&I. So our solution does that exactly. You can remove the name and the resume. You don't need to look at either in order to be able to assess whether or not that person is qualified to do that role. And we do that in a different, unique type of a way. And we're not using AI, just to get ahead of that real quickly. And I'll talk about AI in a moment, about why there's challenges for that type of technology to work in screening. But I think the bigger issue here really just resides in the fact of the problem itself, which is screening. For the last 75 years, companies have essentially been doing screening the exact same way. Okay, the last 25 years, there's been ATSs, but for the last 75 years, even with ATSs, the process remains the same. And that's a recruiter sitting there, opening up a requisition and going through each and every single one of those candidates one by one by one. It's literally the most inefficient way that you could possibly go through the candidates. Not in addition to being inefficient, it's also ineffective. I mean, let's just face it, recruiters are not subject matter experts for these roles that they're hiring for. To expect anything different is just unfair and it's unrealistic. And that's what has traditionally caused a lot of tension and a lot of dysfunction between hiring managers and the recruiters. There's a lot of challenges that come about from that. It takes longer to hire people. The people that they do hire, they're not 100% convinced are the best talent. You know, what hiring managers know is that they're going to get 7 or 8 resumes or maybe 20 resumes from the recruiter. What they don't know is that those are the 7 or 8 best candidates out of 400. That's the problem. I know this. I've been hiring people for almost 24 years now. So I've experienced this firsthand, which is why I built this technology. And so when you think about these problems, it really comes down to the fact that job descriptions, resumes, all this has is surface level information, right? I mean, it is ambiguous and subjective to say the least. These terms that are used on pretty much every one of these documents. Proficiency in, knowledge of, familiarity with. What do those things mean? They don't mean anything unless you give definition to them. And that's what our software does, is it gives not only definition, but the specific definition that that hiring manager for that role is looking for that. You know, you could have a resume say, I have profound knowledge in Ruby on Rails. What does that mean? And what would a recruiter think that thinks that means? Frankly, what would a hiring manager be able to extract from that if they were looking at the resume themselves, right? It's just generic language that doesn't mean anything. What the hiring manager really wants to know is, can this person build non-trivial queries with active record model associations and scopes? And are they comfortable and have they used RSpec and dynamic text picture generation? And can they write HTML and CSS? That's the information that hiring managers want to know. That is the information they almost never get. And there's no way that no possible way that a recruiter is going to go through 600 applicants, 2,000 applicants, and be able to get to that level of detail on every single one of the applicants. And that's just one of maybe 10 or 12 different qualifications that a hiring manager needs to know about them before they interview. They don't find that information out until the interview, which is usually too late. So there's a lot of problems, and the candidates hate this process. As you know, line up any 10 candidates right now and ask them how is the hiring process, and all 10 of them are going to tell you it's awful, right? They'll submit an application, they'll take the time to do that, and then seconds or minutes later, they're going to get responses back saying, I'm sorry, but we're not interested in you. Why? There's no way that you looked at my information. It's because there's too many of them, and there's just not a way to go through it. And even if the recruiters do go through them, they just don't have the subject matter expertise to be able to vet them properly. So the candidates are frustrated. The hiring managers have always been frustrated with this. And the recruiters are frustrated too. They just don't know exactly why, because this is all that they've known how to do, is screen with resumes and job descriptions. So there's a huge problem here, tremendous amount of wasted time, and that's exactly what our solution does. So SmartRank, in short, essentially extracts that information from the hiring manager. We do use AI to help along with that process, but it extracts the exact specific information that the hiring manager is looking for that particular role. It's specific to that hiring manager for that role. And then we'll just ask in multiple choice or multi-select type of questions to every single applicant. There's not a more fair and equitable process than to literally screen every single applicant with the same screening criteria for that particular role. We ask them all these very highly specific questions. It doesn't take them very much time at all. And they actually enjoy it because they understand more about the role and they understand what you're looking for and whether or not they actually have a chance at being able to get hired. So the candidates like it better. The hiring managers sure as hell like it better because they're able to get candidates that they already know are absolutely pre-qualified to the specifications that they're looking for, rather than having a recruiter say, oh yeah, I think this person might be good. Do you think that they're good? That process doesn't work very well. And the recruiters are happier because they're saving a tremendous amount of time so they can go do more productive activities. And it helps the organization overall, the executives. It helps them with turnover. It helps them with being able to save money on not having to go out and hire 10 more recruiters just because they're going to have a spike in hiring and then have to fire those recruiters when the hiring goes back down. So there's some huge benefits that really attract huge organizations like enterprise organizations and even SMB and mid-market to help you separate from the competition. There's a lot of other things that our solution does, but that's really just to kind of highlight some of those. And I'll just make one other mention too. We're not using some sort of AI magic here, right? There's a ton of AI solutions out there, if you want to even call them that. That's kind of being generous. But all they're really doing is comparing resumes to job descriptions, right? They may be able to do that faster, but they're not doing it any more effectively. Why? Because AI can't tell you what that candidate meant when they wrote, I'm highly proficient in Excel, or I have extended familiarity with CI/CD. That doesn't mean anything. And AI can't tell you what that meant unless you define exactly what that is. So it's not effective. And the other big problem is it creates a tremendous amount of legal liability because you've got things like pre-deployment and periodic testing that need to be done to ensure that there's no discrimination or bias in that process. You've got disclosure of data inputs and data outputs. You have to have some sort of a independent human oversight that has to be done. There's an enormous amount of additional work that has to be done. And there's been a 440% increase last year in legislation in AI from the previous year before it. So, and that's only going to continue to go up. So AI can help probably in the hiring process in different areas. Screening's not one of them. You have to get really practical and you have to get really specific about being able to screen or it doesn't work. So I'd love to chat with you. That was the whole point of this video, is just so that you and I could start creating some dialogue and see if this is an opportunity. I promise you, at very least, it'll be very intriguing for you. And if you'd like to see what the technology looks like, I'd be happy to show you. Our paying customers right now absolutely love it. We just don't have the funding, the resources, or the brand name that a company like Greenhouse has, which is why, again, I think that this would be a great partnership. Again, my name's Keith Hulen, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of SmartRank. And the best way to reach me is probably through email, which is Keith, Keith, at SmartRank, all one word, SmartRank.ai. Or you can call me on my cell phone at 720-771-4013. I hope that we can connect, and I hope we can talk about this opportunity because, again, I think it's a big win-win for both companies. Thanks, Daniel, and hope to hear from you soon.